I go. I'm soaking in his mic for it. I'm trying to do her from his fan. They try to revive a franchise already dead. Drag Clementine back just to mess with her head. A cash grab sequel so no one ever desired. Telltale told her story, this one should have expired. Clementine ran when the dark closed in. Left AJ asleep like he was nothing to begin. Raised him through hell, said I'll never walk away. Then packed her bags at night and left him anyway. The comic's full of moans, just whining on repeat. Characters so dull, they put the dead to sleep. The writer took a legend, thought she'd make it hers, but all she did was spit on what came before her. No mention of the past, no, not of what she owed. Just sails to new lands when a fan base implodes. A lifeless romance in a story no one asked for. With art so childish it belongs on a fridge door. This isn't a tribute, it's a funeral pyre. Light the match, toss the book and set it on fire. And if Clem can ditch AJ without a goodbye, don't be shocked when the fans leave her behind.
Okay, let's get this over with. I hope you enjoyed my intro with the epic burning of this book, because that is definitely what it deserves. This has been a long time coming, the third in the trilogy of Clementine, and it's not worth the paper it's printed on, just to spoil the review right off the bat. But now we have time traveled, the book is back, because we still have to review it, and we'll go through it page by page, just like we did with the previous two installments, which you can see the links in the description to my last two reviews. But just a quick recap for those who don't know, this is based on the Walking Dead Telltale Games series. And this character of Clementine had an incredible story arc where she went from being a small child who was in need of protection to growing up and then becoming the protector for another child named AJ, who is somebody that she had raised essentially since a baby. She is, for all intents and purposes, this child's adopted mother. And then the book series starts out with Clementine abandoning this child in the middle of the night because she said she's feeling a little down or something. She's a little depressed, and I guess abandoning the one who loves you more than probably anybody else has ever loved you in the world is the way that she's going to cure that or something. She doesn't even say goodbye. She was going to leave in the middle of the night, and she's like smiling while she does so. Oh, it's so much fun, guys. And she only has one leg, by the way. Not ideal in the zombie apocalypse to be walking around like that. Right off the bat, you pretty much hate this character because we built her up as this person who was protecting somebody. She said she was never going to leave AJ. She promised him that, and then she does. Anyways.
What's the first rule? Never go alone.
I'm not going anywhere. Not anytime soon.
You can't break promises, AJ. I know.
This book series does not address that in any way. You got that in Clementine Lives, which was a prequel to this series in a magazine. So if you went straight from the video games to reading this book series, you would be just kind of lost and confused. Like, where's AJ? What happened to all the kids? They don't really address it. They don't even mention AJ in this book. Spoiler alert, she is not going back to AJ. She left the continent in the end of the last book, and now she's in Greenland this whole book. Doesn't even mention him once. There's one reference to the original, well, technically two references to the original game series, but other than that, it's not even mentioned. Forget about AJ, none of that matters. It's all about these new cast characters that we never really got to care about. So that's why I object to this series so strongly, is just the fact that we had that amazing story arc, built up this connection between her and this character AJ, and then she just abandons him, and we're supposed to still care about her after that. And I really don't, I'm sorry. And that last season of that game really emphasized that AJ needs her to guide him. So it really just did not land at all for me.
If you get bit, I'd want you to bite me too. What? You don't mean that. I want to be alone. Please don't be mad. I can't live with you not with me, Clem. I know we've talked about it.
I understand depression, okay, I understand that, but after a while, she should have wanted to go back to AJ. And the reasoning for that changed, by the way. When she left AJ, she's like, I know you're safe. You're in this place. It's secure. You don't have to worry about anything. And AJ didn't really fight her. He didn't want to continue on with her. He just ran back to the school where they were staying. And then in the second book, she said, well, actually, I left that place because I thought that they were going to die, because everybody that I hang out with ends up dying eventually. So, yeah, I just thought he was going to die, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't there for that. Extra selfish, and makes it even worse, in my opinion. And this book doesn't even mention AJ or any of that at all. So, if you're hoping for that at the end of this book series, it's not happening. So that's just a quick recap to where we are leading into this book. This book does nothing to fix that. And the biggest problem with this book series is just how uneventful it is. I don't care for the art style. It's very cartoony, which can be fine, but it's nowhere near the quality that we're used to from the Walking Dead franchise, where the original comics looked a lot better. And it does preserve the gray tone look, the black and white look, which I do appreciate, but it's barely a zombie book. Not a lot happens. There's more drama and intensity in a single episode of the Telltale Walking Dead game or a single issue of the comic series. Like, this is shorter than a year's worth of the original Walking Dead comic, but the original Walking Dead comic had a lot more going on, a lot more intensity, a lot more zombie action than this whole trilogy. And it's really just kind of boring, and the characters are unlikable, and it's not something that I can really relate much to. There's a couple things here or there that are okay, but it's just, on top of destroying the character of Clementine, it's just really a dull, boring book, not something that in and of itself is even worth reading. The original Walking Dead comics, I would read first. The original Telltale games, I would play those. This is not something I would recommend for anybody under any circumstance. It's just blatantly obvious to me that this trilogy of comics here is created by somebody with zero passion for the source material whatsoever. Somebody who doesn't care about the zombie genre in and of itself, doesn't care about apocalyptic fiction. This is somebody who does not care about the original Telltale Walking Dead games, doesn't care about the Walking Dead original comic series or the TV show. This is just a paycheck. I suppose I could be wrong. Maybe it is a work of passion. It just doesn't come off that way to me. No fan who actually loved the Clementine character would come up with something remotely like this whatsoever. It does not come from a genuine love of the source material. While there are millions of fans of the original game series, the original comic series, the Walking Dead TV show, who could come in and do something amazing with this character just as a blank slate. There's so many different directions you could go in, and instead we have this character destruction. And it's just kind of shameful that this was allowed to happen. And forget about the fans for a second. What about the Telltale creators, the people that wrote this character, that put so much effort into creating that story arc and pulling it off? The voice actor, everybody involved with the original Telltale Walking Dead series. None of the passion and the talent that went into that original creation is represented in this comic series at all. If anything, this is an insult to all of that work and all of that passion from the people making it. But with that, I think it's about time we just break into the full breakdown review, and I'll give you my final verdict at the end on the other side. All right, everybody, so here it is, the moment we've been waiting for, Clementine Book 3. So I will admit that this book is a little better than the last one, in the sense that the ending isn't just like, oh, zombies appear and everybody dies. Like, it's a little bit more creative than that. Of course, you know, it's a zombie book, or in theory anyways, it's really not, but it's supposed to be a zombie book. So you kind of expect, you know, that to happen, where zombies break into the place that's supposed to be safe. And, you know, it's just kind of the cycle of how these stories go, as eventually a threat breaks through. That's not really what happens. We're building up this villain character over time, and then at the end of the book, you know, it's supposed to be a shocking twist when this person turns, even though you see it coming from a mile away. And then there's a climax that it's kind of, by Walking Dead standards, like nowhere near the brutality we kind of expect. Even like by the standards of the Telltale series, I say Telltale Walking Dead Season 2 is probably the most like brutal and nihilistic that the series had ever gotten. So seeing something this tame is just like completely not memorable. You know, something we'll forget about. I've already basically forgotten by the time I'm done. So that's why I binge read these books and then I do these reviews and I put them away because I forget most of the details. So that's the thing with this book, is we're building up to this climax at the end and it's just not really satisfying payoff. And it's just not interesting. There's a lot of drama. Of course, Walking Dead is all about the drama, right? Interpersonal drama and how characters change and psychology and stuff. But you got to break that up with some clever twists, some shocking stuff, some brutality, some zombie action. There's just no pacing to these books at all. You know, it's just talking about nonsense, introducing characters, not really developing them, and then they either die or, you know, we still don't care about them by the end. So that's the big flaws here. It's really boils down to pacing more than anything else. But, you know, there's also the fact of unlikable characters, which we will get back to right at the beginning of the book here, because it's a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. But before we get too much further, I just want to say, I know I'm harsh on this book series, and I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, okay? I'm trying to be nicer. I don't like my old videos where I used to swear a lot and stuff like that. So I'm changing, I'm becoming more mature and stuff. But I just want to say that everything I've ever said about this book series comes from a place of love, because I love The Walking Dead. I love Telltale's The Walking Dead. I love this character of Clementine. And it's really like that passion that makes me care about this, because if I didn't have that passion, I wouldn't have been interested in this book in the first place. So I'm just coming to say that. And this book is supposed to bring new audience into the Walking Dead universe, into the Clementine character. I don't think that these books stand on their own either. So it's not even just like, oh, they destroyed the character, that's why it's bad. I think these books are bad in and of themselves. The first scene, we had a character named Olivia, who's barely in this book, but basically she was impregnated by Amos in the first book, and he was pretty much the most likable character in the series. And I think if instead of killing him off, if he hung around for a while, we'd be in a better place because we have a character that we like. But instead, it's Olivia, who never really has been developed that much. And she's barely in this book, but we're supposed to care about her, right? So we start off with her giving birth. So we skip over them on a boat. They sailed over to Greenland. And they did this in the last book too, where Clementine was in a coma, so they skipped past a lot of stuff that could have been interesting. So we missed introducing ourselves to this group in Greenland. We missed the negotiations of like, are these people going to let us in? What's the dynamic of this group? Are they suspicious of outsiders? Like, all that drama in Walking Dead of like, how does this group live? How are they different? How are they distinct? What are their customs? All of that type of stuff that we as Walking Dead and Apocalypse like fiction fans, we want to see that. We want to see how they operate. We skip past all of that and we get filled in a little bit later, but you just kind of got to accept like, okay, we're here now, and they got a house and they traded a boat for the house, and I don't know. It's a lot of stuff that, like, to me, what about this group made you trust them enough that you would give up your only means of leaving, aka the boat? You know, it's a big gamble. It was a big gamble to even come here in the first place. I don't even really understand the motivation of why they would do that when they had a safe place to live back home, when Clementine has somebody she loves called AJ that she doesn't mention. But, you know, we'll just forget about AJ for the rest of this review because it's not relevant. Unfortunately, I wish it was. I wish she mentioned it. I wish she had a moment of regret where she wonders how he's doing. It's just, they clearly don't care about the fans of the series at all. But anyways, I think I'm rambling too much, so we'll just go into the breakdown here. So Olivia at the beginning is giving birth. You know, we just skip right to that. And most of the first bit of this book here is about her giving birth and what's going to happen with the baby. And to me, of all the things they could have skipped, I would have skipped the baby, you know, the giving birth stuff and just have the baby be there. And I would have seen the entrance, you know, like we talked about. But anyways, Olivia's just like kill me, I'm in such, this has to stop, don't bring up the baby, blah, blah. And all this stuff, to me, it's just an unlikable character. And I understand she's in pain. I do have sympathy for it. If this was a real situation, it's an extreme situation. It's a lot of pain to be in. I totally respect that. But even in Walking Dead, we've had a lot of characters give birth before. And we've never really seen, like, oh, kill me, I don't care about the baby. It's just selfish. And I understand you're not in your right mind. Like I said, if it's real life, I have more sympathy for it than in a book. But in a book, we want the characters to be likable, right? And in order for a character to be likable, they have to care about other people. And especially the baby in Olivia's belly, right? So she's just asking to be killed, and she doesn't care about the baby. And one of the things with this unlikable cast is everybody's just constantly complaining. And I understand, like, it's a really rough situation, but there's barely any humor. It's just everybody's whining all the time, and it's hard to read that. It's hard to be invested in these characters under those circumstances. Not that they can never complain, not that there's something wrong with characters having flaws, but it gets to a point where it's like that is the primary means of introducing us to this cast is by what they're complaining about. So that's just bad first impression right off the bat. Another problem with setting this book in Greenland is there's a lot of dialogue here that is in, either Danish or Greenlandic, and it's untranslated. And on one hand, I guess it's immersive to have that dialogue in there, but it's showing us why we probably shouldn't have gone here in the first place, because they show this other language on the panel there, but we don't understand it. I could Google Translate it if I cared enough. I don't. Spoiler alert. But really, it just puts a barrier between our cast and everybody else that doesn't seem to really add to the story in any meaningful way. There's never a point where, oh, how do I communicate with these people? If I say the wrong thing or they misinterpret what I'm saying, that could lead to a conflict. There's nothing like that. It's just like every character who needs to be able to communicate with them can just speak English, which is a little weird because we have a cast of primarily people under the age of 18. And I don't know why kids born into the apocalypse would necessarily be taught English, if that makes sense. Now, I guess they were in second grade or something. I understand a lot of the world learns English because it's kind of the international trade language, but still, it just seemed a little unrealistic that they would hang on to that, because maybe they would have spoken it as kids, but why would they have need to speak English? Although I guess they do have some type of trade thing going on, but I don't know. That's just an aside, really, at the end of the day. So the baby's born, the midwife leaves, and then, there's weird dialogue here, like, this apartment now has to fit one more person. It's like, yeah, well, you guys knew that was coming, right? Like, this shouldn't be a surprise. And they're even talking about, like, they haven't given the baby a name yet. I don't even actually know if they ever give the baby a name. It's like they didn't think about that at all. I mean, it's been a while, I don't know. It feels like something they should have figured out already. So we don't exactly have an explosive intro here. We're many pages in at this point. It's just, okay, she gave birth, which is something we already knew was going to happen. There was never a point where it was like touch and go. She was just in a lot of pain and screamed a lot. So not a great start to the story, in my opinion. So Clem and Rika are walking through the village here. And because it's this book series, we need to apparently have a mention of periods in every single Clementine book. So we're 3 for 3 now. And they have a part, do you need pads? They had to throw that in there. I'm not necessarily against it. I just think it's kind of funny. The other thing that they do a lot in this book is this character, Olivia, the mother. She is shown breastfeeding a lot. And I'm kind of hesitant to show it because I feel a little weird about it. Now, of course, I'm not a prude. I have no problem with seeing breastfeeding. And, I even would go so far as to say, like, it should be normal to see that in public. Like, I have no issue with that whatsoever. What I do have a problem with is this book featuring predominantly underage girls and still showing that. I think that it's a little weird for me. I think Olivia is under 18. I could be wrong. I don't know. I always thought that they're kids, but whatever. Okay, so they're gonna get work assignments, and apparently Clementine was like really aggressive when she showed up to this new group. It's like, yeah, okay, let's definitely start off on the wrong foot when we're like a continent away from anybody else. That's great. I somehow doubt they were prepared to make a return voyage. I doubt that they had enough supplies for both ways, so it's a pretty high stakes situation, you know, and I understand wanting to protect yourself and everything Clementine has been through, but it's a little kind of funny that Clementine almost ruined it. So Clementine has a new prosthetic, but she mostly uses the old one. So it just seems like an afterthought, but they try to put here like this new one. It's more balanced, but she can't go as fast. Even though the last one's just like a hook thing. So it just seems to me like that would easily wear out over time. But it's just an afterthought. We still have this conversation about what are we going to name the prosthetic, which is never something I cared about. And they went on it for so long about the other one, and they named the other one Kenny. And then this new one, she eventually gives it the name Rosie, which I had to look up what that was, and it was apparently the dog in Walking Dead Season 4. So not even like AJ or somebody else, you know, not even Lee. I would have liked Lee better. AJ would just kind of rub it in, so I get why they didn't pick that. But it's just kind of, I don't know why we're talking about this so much. And then we have this, we're introducing this group that Clementine ends up getting involved with, and they're the group that patrols the outside that kills all the zombies. And the key concept here is that they're all girls, you know, they're all not even like full-grown women, like they're all teenage girls. And we have a village full of, you know, grown adults, children. I'm sorry, it's not believable at all. And, you know, I'm okay with girl boss stuff. You know, I'm cool with, you know, characters like Clementine killing zombies. Like, I love that stuff. But we have a whole community here of a lot of people. It's relatively big. And we're supposed to buy that all of the men in the village are just okay with, you know, the fact that they're physically stronger than these girls who are protecting them. It just doesn't really make sense. You know, it doesn't have a setup that is realistic or grounded in an apocalypse situation. You know, it would just be, of course, the women would be involved too. I'm all for if a woman wants to do that job and she has the ability for it, 100% for that. But just to have this be the way this community is set up, it's not believable. It's weird. It doesn't really make sense. So just right off the bat, and I get that they're doing it because, you know, most of the characters are young girls and we want to have, you know, somebody that's relatable to Clementine, that she wants to be there with them, and Fen and all that. So I guess, you know, I understand what they're trying to do there. It just doesn't really make sense. It would have made more sense if this was just like a group existing on their own and not protecting this whole big community. But they're the ones killing the zombies, and they're supposed to also kill other people. You know, I'm assuming that there would be like raiders and marauders and stuff like that. And they also have to take prisoners outside the walls. So that's what they do. And there's another weird line here where Rika says, you know, how many dead are there? Doesn't smell like many. And, you know, I get that the dead would smell, and I actually like that they mention that, especially in the TV show, because they'll just kill a bunch of zombies and there's just like piles of bodies everywhere and they act like it doesn't stink. Like, it would be unbearable to breathe that air after some of these corpses. But, you know, here we have Rika saying it doesn't smell like many, and I like the mention of smelling, but it's weird because I think hearing would be the main way that you would determine how many there were, 'cause zombies groan, they step on things, they make noise. So, you know, I think they would mention the sound first, but, you know, whatever. So this guy Derek is handing Rika the baby, and she's like, I don't know how to hold her. And the guy's like, just don't drop her. It's like, okay, I know because I've held a baby in real life, right? I don't have any children, but I've been around them enough. And I know if you're going to hand somebody a newborn baby, just don't drop her is a little inadequate. I would say just don't drop her and hold her head. You know, you got to hold the head because babies don't have the strength to hold up their own head. So that's very key. And they drew it like that. You know, he's holding her head. But if you're gonna if somebody's freaking out and they don't know how to hold her, you just be like, just don't drop her and hold her head. Hold her head is definitely an important part. Okay, so that's just an aside. So here we go with this character Saw, right? Sodded. I don't know how to actually say it. But here we have this character Saw, and she is insufferable. She just, every line she says is either a complaint or like passive aggressive. Like here she's like, since when do you help me cook? And that's like backhanded way of saying like, oh, you never help me. It's not like, hey, thanks for helping, or I don't know, something likable. I don't know. And then it's every line that she says, how long do you think we'll be in this apartment? And then she says, well, since we gave the council our boat for this place, I think we've got some time. Just, she can't answer the question normally. It's more like treating Clementine like she's stupid for even asking. It's just not a person I would want to spend time around. The stuff with the baby's kind of funny, she's peeing on him and stuff. And then, Clementine starts saying something and Saw's like, you want to leave already? Can't you see how good we have it? Didn't you have it pretty good back on the other continent before you did crazy stuff? Your generation makes no sense to me. Well, if you don't remember, in the last book, Saw said she was glad that the apocalypse happened because somebody on an airline was mean to her once. I'm glad the airlines are gone. They were mean to me. Like, you're actually the crazy one. You make no sense. And she's like, your generation makes no sense to me. I didn't even really see her as that much older, but that's, again, the art style. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on sometimes. And then she goes on about people she knew back home, and nothing happens with it. It's just completely irrelevant to anything going on. You can't buy a house for her. Everything is earned now. I mean, it's like, well, how do you get the money to buy a house? Oh, right, you earn it. It's just a weird way of saying something. And then here's Fen, who I think I thought it was a boy the whole time. I would have to watch my last review to see if I picked up on that she's a girl or not. I didn't notice. I thought it was a boy before when I picked up this book. But part of Fen's backstory is, the family is in Taiwan, and they talked about that in the last book. They mention it here briefly and then never really mention it again. So it just kind of feels like a pointless backstory. Nothing really is built on, in my opinion. But, I don't think about the future much, just the past. That's an emotional thing. I get that. And here we're introduced to Ujami. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Greenland names, apologies if I butcher it. But we got this character here who's in charge of the town. Well, she's on this council, so presumably there's others, but she's pretty much the only named one, I'm pretty sure. So she's the main person in charge of the town. And she is the person that everybody in this room should be endlessly grateful for. Because, that she's giving them all this free stuff with the promise that they'll work down the road. But they, traded the boat for the house. They're letting them live there. They're letting them into their community. They're giving them food. So they should be grateful. And what does Saw say when she shows up? Because Saw is passive aggressive. What does she say? You're here because, it's just like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you should have expected that she would come by at some point. She even says, you have me to thank for this lovely flat and food rations, which presumably they already met this person. So I don't know why. I mean, it's just obviously info dump for us. So she starts to kind of enumerate everybody who's in the house. And we again have this discussion about, we have 2 adults and 4 children. And then they're like, we're not kids. Which I'm so sick of hearing that at this point. Yes, you are children. Yes, it does matter. Stop arguing every time somebody says, like, hey, kids, how you guys doing? Kids, we're not kids. Stop it. Just don't. So they're talking about all of their work assignments and what skills they have and stuff like that. And they're going to go to school. All of the kids are going to go to school. And we're again introduced to the girls who are watching the perimeter and protecting the town. They're called the gardeners, which you will see why down the road here. Clementine wants to kill the dead because she's better at it than anybody else. I'm sorry. Clementine's very capable, but she's also handicapped, which, she overcomes for sure. But would I put somebody like that on the front lines? Not really. I don't think I would do that. And there are definitely people who are stronger, bigger people who I would do that first. But of course, it does make sense that Clementine would say that because she has a lot of experience killing zombies for sure. So they're talking about the rules, and they say that leaving the city perimeter is allowed, but the council needs to be notified. I'm not sure why they would allow it, to be honest. I mean, if you need to leave, you can ask for permission and we might approve it, maybe. But I don't think that there's really any need to go other places, and it is a risk. So it is kind of like a weird thing to just say, like, yeah, you can leave whenever. They have mail that goes out, but it's like, who are you mailing? The other town in Greenland? And why would these people who just showed up in a boat need to mail anything? Now, they did talk about letters being sent by the boat, but also, like, why are they sending boats out to places? I guess they're trading or something, but they have connections with this other community across the ocean. It just doesn't feel like it makes sense in an apocalypse situation, but I guess we'll just accept that. So the kids don't want to go to school, and they're all shocked. Whoa, we're going to school, guys. And here we got a page that's like very chaotic, right? But it's also just an example of the insufferable cast, right? So we have, a sick mother. She just gave birth, and there's this ambiguity of like, is she gonna die? Like, they think she might die. She's throwing up and she's got a fever and it's not getting better, and they're cleaning up blood and they have to make tea, and Saw is like, oh, I don't get it. Like, she complains about everything. Like, I just despise this character, dude. Meanwhile, Rick is like, I don't think I made the tea right. It's disgusting. Like, how do you make tea wrong? You just put the tea bags in the water. Like, I don't know. Or, if you don't have tea bags and you just have the tea, you just put the tea in the water and then you strain it out later. Like, it's really not hard. I don't know how you mess that up, frankly. And then Fen is like, oh no, she threw up on me. Ah. So you have no sympathy for what's going on with her. It's just like, I don't know. So the town has this thing where people go to other people's houses and they eat food and meet people. But none of these characters ever come back again, so none of this really matters. They try to force this, Clementine romance thing. I never was invested in, but I'm sure somebody is. There's this guy at the party who's telling everything I actually want to know. And, like, I want to know the history of this town. Like, I want to know how they survived. I want to know what the dynamics are, what the conflicts are, and they just kind of brush it aside as like, oh, I'm so bored that he's telling me this stuff. Like, I, as a fan, want to know what he's gonna say. Like, I don't care about, eating cake or making tea or like any of this other stuff in the book. The most interesting stuff to me is like, what is going on with this community? And it's just such an afterthought, to the point where the characters are actually saying like, oh, it's so boring. And then we meet the main primary villain character, and it's just such an odd conversation, dude. She's like, oh, I love a good treat, but I'm starting to think about winter when people are gonna die. And it might be worth people dying because I like cookies. Like, what the fuck? Like, and then Clementine joins this person later, and like, it doesn't matter to her that like this person's freaking weird. She's like, yeah, I'm morbid as well. It's like, I can't stop thinking about people dying. It's like, I don't know, if somebody introduced themselves to me like that, I would be like, yeah, I'm not gonna get involved with this person. But this person ends up trying to be like a mother figure to Clementine down the road. It's just, there's so many red flags, and Clementine just does not notice or something. I don't know, because of what's about to happen in this next page here. So Olivia's like still sick. It feels like she's gonna die. They get her Tylenol, they find her meds, and they're talking about going to school, and they talk about how it was when they went to school before, which, I don't really care about that. Oh, Clementine, I had my own locker and it had a name on it. I don't know. It's just not compelling at all. And then we go to school, and it's all in another language, which obviously makes sense. But we have these kids being forced to sit in class, and the principal is the same lady we met before, the council lady, and she's just constantly getting on them about, you got to get to class, you got to help, you got to come to class, you got to come to class. Like the whole book, she's talking about that. But they're in a class with a language they don't understand, homework they can't do because they don't know what's going on. It's genuinely a waste of their time. If they wanted to involve them in school, they should have a class just for them to learn the language, or just have a class in English and just for them. You know, if it's so important for them to go to school, you should really try to like incorporate them in a way that they're not just like doing nothing. You know, like it doesn't make any sense. And I also think they should be learning more survival skills. You know, a recent film, 28 Years Later, excellent film, I loved it. But they had a school in that community that they were portraying there, and it's only on screen for like less than a minute. But even then, there's more thought put into that minute than there is in this whole book. You know, in that movie, we got a quick glimpse of like, here's a wall of all the different jobs you can have in this community. And we're out, you know, teaching them how to do archery because that's really important for survival. And like, you could see them using tangible survival skills. Not that you shouldn't learn history and other stuff like that. They showed that in that movie too. But just a little depth and thought would be cool. But instead it's just like, oh, we're learning math. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, but like other stuff too, right? Everything in this book feels like an afterthought. It's very shallow. There's no depth to anything. And comparing it to like 28 years later, it just shows you like there's so much more thought put into that like 1 minute of that film than there is this whole book. And they have classes learning Braille. I don't know why that's a priority, you know, in the apocalypse. You know, I'm sure that's helpful for people that are visually impaired, but I don't know that that's... I would think extra classes at night would be about, you know, survival skills or something. And then all of a sudden, you know, we had this stuff about Olivia being sick and you think she might die, but it's a misdirection because the character who's actually going to die is, spoiler alert, Rika. She just collapses, and they set it up a little bit by like she's foggy all of a sudden. She had a headache last night and now she doesn't remember those girls that are protecting everything, and she's wondering where Finn is, and Rika doesn't know what's going on. And then this grief that Clem feels over this is like the inciting incident for the rest of the book. So we're 58 pages in, and we're getting the inciting incident. And if you guys know anything about storytelling, that is absolutely insane when it comes to a comic book, because a comic book is supposed to be 22 pages and it comes out monthly, like traditionally speaking. So by comic book standards, this would be like, you know, being 30 minutes into an 2-hour movie and getting the inciting incident. Like it's crazy. And comics are supposed to be like a visual medium. It's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be kinetic. It's supposed to feel like it's moving. It's supposed to be bigger than the page, you know. And Walking Dead's a little different because it's more of a drama. But even still, like Walking Dead set up, you know, Rick being on the hospital bed, like that. The inciting incident of the Walking Dead original comic series is like a few pages in. You know, here we're 58 pages in. We're just getting it. You know, Clementine's grief over Rika is what inspires her to say, forget school, which is pointless anyway. And she just wants to kill zombies to forget about it, which, you know, we've had a lot of characters do that in Walking Dead. It's fine as a storyline. And if you cared about that character, you know, this might be like shocking, but it's like, okay, at least something happened. But I didn't personally care about it. You know, Clementine's lost so many people at this point. I was never invested in that character to begin with. It's fine as a storyline. It just didn't really do anything for me personally. So here's a line where it's another contradictory thing, where we had it established that these characters who guard the town are called gardeners. And then we have it established elsewhere that, like, you shouldn't call them that because they get offended by it. And here we have one of the girls calling themselves that. So I guess it's for just to reinforce, like, that's who these characters are. But it does seem weird, like contradictory. But Another thing, Clementine's grieving, totally understand, but she's also, just kind of being mean to everybody. And, I do have sympathy for it, but it's again just like if we had a character who was likable other times and then they struggled with this thing, that would be cool. But we have characters who are like generally unlikable, and then something bad happens to them and they're even more unlikable, so they're just even more insufferable. So Clementine doesn't seem to care at all about a funeral for the person she's grieving over. She doesn't care about Olivia, even though she spent so much time, trying to get Olivia medicine and caring about Olivia. She cares about her here, and then she's just like, I don't know where Fen is, I'm sorry, and then she walks away and doesn't talk to her again for a long time. And I get it, she's grieving, but it's just hard to care about these characters, man. So we're going to the gardeners. This is where we learn what the gardener thing means, and it is very dumb. So they live in this house, and surrounding the house is a bunch of dirt, and they just bury living zombies in the dirt for no reason. There is no explanation for it, really. They just bury these. It's supposedly to make them stronger. They force once a month each of the girls living in this house who's patrolling has to bury a zombie alive, which is very dangerous. And it's just supposed to be like a training exercise. It has no practical purpose. They talk about like it's reserved for those who hurt us, and it's where we prove no one will hurt us again. But they emphasize later that somebody lost a limb as a result of this, and somebody else, Fen, later in the book, loses a limb doing the same thing. It's just such a very unnecessary risk to be taking, and serves no purpose whatsoever. It would make more sense if it was like, we've had in Walking Dead before, I think the TV show, I don't think in the original comic, but in the TV show, we had the concept of like zombie moats, where you would have surrounding your wall, you would have just a crevice filled with zombies so that people can't get through. And that's an interesting concept. That's a purpose to have zombies there. It's not necessarily like a good idea. They did it on Fear the Walking Dead and it got many people killed. But at the same time, at least there's like some thought put into it. It's a cool visual, I guess, but it's a little creepy. But that's another thing where it's like, yeah, I don't want to join these crazy people who have a bunch of zombies buried in. It makes no sense. Because there's this thing, guys, I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing where water falls from the sky. It's called rain, precipitation. And when it gets into the soil, it gets a little looser, guys. So I don't know if you knew that or not, but, zombies, they wriggle around. And I've seen a lot of zombie movies where there's reaching through the dirt, a zombie comes out. And it's happened in Walking Dead too, by the way. I seem to remember Shane bursting out from the ground as well. So it's just really dumb. I don't have anything else to add. It's just so stupid. So Maria is the creepy character who is the big bad of this book. But Clementine wants to join them because they'll let her kill zombies. They're mad at her for killing zombies because it's practice for the girls, in the same way that like the gardening is practice, I suppose. But it's such a weird character, this Maria person. And later on in the book, we learn like Maria set it up like, oh, my family all died. I lost everything, just like you, Clem. And then later in the book, it's like, oh, yeah, no, her family didn't actually die, and they just left her, which, tragic backstory or whatever. But it just doesn't really line up. Like, it doesn't really make sense why it's like that. It's supposed to be a twist. I don't understand what I'm supposed to get out of it. I would have preferred the twist to be like, oh yeah, she murdered her family or something. But then it's like, if it was that extreme, why would they keep this person around who's clearly psychotic? Later on, the council person who has history with this person, they've had their community set up like this for years and years. And then like all of a sudden they're like, no, we don't want to have it set up like this anymore. And they don't have a backup plan. They don't have, a militia ready to take these people down or whatever. Like, they're just like, yeah, you're gonna stop now. And it's just like, this whole setup makes no sense for this community, because these people are unhinged and they depend on them. And then she tells Clem, I'll take everything you're feeling, all your grief, and kill it. And I guess that's why she appeals to Clem, but it's never really discussed how that's going to work. It doesn't make any sense. So they capture Clementine and just throw her in with the zombies, no weapons, and she's supposed to bury the zombie, and she does it. And, they just push her in, despite the fact, she only has one leg, and it just doesn't... It doesn't make sense that Clementine would want to be with this group later. Like, they're clearly insane. They're having her do something that doesn't provide any benefit at all. It's some sort of, like, initiation ritual, I guess. But it would make more sense if Clementine killed the zombie here instead of actually doing the thing. If she killed the zombie and then they got mad at her. I don't know. It just... Clementine being in with this group, I just don't understand what they're doing. And we have these flashbacks and we see Rika, what she's thinking about, but that stuff's okay. Clementine missed the funeral, sad face, and Olivia, who's again, breastfeeding here, which is weird because she's underage, I think. And then she's like, where were you? And Clementine's like, please don't. Clementine shows no care for anybody else, and it's just really sad to see. And Olivia just gave birth. She's probably going through postpartum depression, and she has to lose somebody on top of that, and Clementine abandons her, but she abandoned AJ, so I guess it makes sense. It's just awful to read, man. I'm supposed to have sympathy for it, but I just really don't. So we're introduced to some of these characters. Most of them are pretty one note in this group of girls. And it's just a weird exchange, weird dialogue again. Like, oh, Bina, not now. Stop being boring. I mean, and all she was saying was like, hi, you need new clothes. I'm this person. Stop being boring. Boring? People with two arms are boring. I'm fascinated. I don't know. It's just, it's not funny. It's not cute. It's compelling. We got a map of the community, which I actually appreciate. I just wish we kind of went in more detail. And then Clementine says, when I was past the wall, I could tell there was rubble under me. And then this girl says, good catch. Newark used to be a lot bigger. Fire, famine, and all this stuff. And I don't know, just good catch is a weird way to put that. And this thing Clementine's saying is also weird to say. I don't know. It's just so awkward. This is where we find out each of these people buries one zombie every month. And sometimes if they don't have enough, they unbury old ones. It's weird. We learned this guy's name means dear little feather. They just plant these things there and then they don't do anything with it. It doesn't have any greater meaning or significance, like a story should, where if you plant a detail in there, it's going to be a setup for something later. There's a payoff later, or maybe it's subtle symbolism. There's nothing like that in this book. It's just kind of sad. Council lady comes in. She's mad. She's bringing less food for some reason. She's mad that Clementine and Fen are there, even though she's the principal and would have known that they're not there, because every school takes attendance. Come on, bro. Now they're acting all surprised. Somebody gives Clementine a baseball cap. Whoa, ooh, shout out to the fact she wore a baseball cap before. Don't care, dude. Really don't. That hat had significance because it was given to her by Lee. This is some random person we don't care about. We just met in this group of crazy people. I don't care about these people at all, so I don't care about the hat. Here we have the picture of Rika. And I do admit, when I was flipping through this book, I'm sorry to say it, but when I flipped past, there's a page here towards the end where you see the grave site, and I saw that she was gone. I was like, oh, well, that's good. I was like, I'm glad. I'm kind of glad that that's not going to carry on into future installments, if there is any. Because, again, I just kind of want to forget about this comic series ever happening. And if we see Clementine again, we just see her back in the school with AJ, and we just forget about everything. That's the ideal for me. So here it's set up Clementine's not allowed to leave and go home. And it's weird because Fen was doing that before, and then she's like, no, that's different. And I guess maybe Fen had the goal of bringing Clementine there or something, but that wasn't the vibe I was getting, but she was talking about there was a goal going back there. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. And then Clementine sees Maria and she's like, I'm going back to check on our friends. And then she's like, all right, there's no harm in that. And I guess the idea here is that it's supposed to be like kind of a passive aggressive way of saying like, I don't actually want you to go, but you're going to go anyway, so whatever. But I mean, she said, go see your friends. And then Clementine's like, oh, never mind, actually, forget it. It's like, okay, I don't know. Am I supposed to care about... Clementine doesn't even care about Olivia and these other characters. I never really did. So how am I supposed to care about Clementine who doesn't care about anybody else except for killing zombies? It's just weird. And then this lady's trying to guilt trip Clementine for wanting to defend the wall and stuff. And it's like, she's trying to convince you all you're good for is violence and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I understand that point of view, saying you can do more than that, but it is the apocalypse and it is important. And even in today's world, if somebody wants to join the military, like, that's considered a noble thing, regardless of if you agree with what they're doing or not. Like, just the idea, like, I'm out here fighting to protect people is a noble pursuit. And here we're just like, oh no, it's just bad. It's like, well, if those people didn't exist, this town would have been overrun a long time ago. It doesn't make any sense. So here's where things get weird with Maria, and they're talking about, grief and whatnot. And Clem is like, Rika is different. I was so safe with her. You mean like how you were so safe with AJ at the school, you thought you could abandon him and it was fine? You mean that safe? And how safe is that when like every other person they've run into except for Olivia and Fen and Saw and whatnot, like everybody else died, but they feel so safe together. Like, whatever, dude. And then Maria's like, oh yes, people can die, everybody can die, everybody who mattered died, blah blah. And then Olivia shows up. This is where it's like, if we buy into Clementine on this quest, wanting to defend people and join this group, this is where it'll lose everybody reading it. Basically, Olivia comes and she's like, I'm worried about you. And Clementine just is kind of rude and like wants her to go away. Olivia's there trying to warn Clementine that like there's something weird going on. It's not going to last, like something's going to change. Instead of asking any questions, she just immediately dismisses it. And then Clementine is very dismissive of Olivia's like suffering here and says like, I need you. Like, I have a baby now and we lost the same person. Like, we need each other. And Clementine again is just like, no, I'm angry with you now for coming to see me. And this is where it'll lose everybody is, Maria's here. She says, don't come back here, girl. Wouldn't want something to happen to that little one. So here we have a character that Clementine was supposed to care about, this Olivia girl. Somebody who showed up showing concern for her and wanting nothing but just to spend time with her again. And instead, Maria threatens the baby. And don't tell me Clementine didn't hear that. She was right here. How are you going to stay with a crazy lady that just threatened to kill a baby? Like, what is wrong with Clementine at this point? How am I supposed to care about anything she's going through when she won't stick up for her friend who just had her baby threatened? Like, it's honestly sickening that it went to that degree. You don't even need this dialogue here at all. You can just have her say, don't come back here. And that it still is kind of messed up that it went that way, but it doesn't cross the line. That's just unacceptable. So now we're kicking out somebody for stealing, which it does seem a bit harsh. They basically are like, yeah, it's a big island and the next community is really far away, so they're probably going to die, and we don't let them turn back. And, obviously it's not really a moral way to deal with theft, but I understand, it's an apocalypse, so you maybe don't have the resources just to throw them in a jail cell or something. But I mean, it does seem like we're in a more civilized situation at this point, that you can find a better means of punishment than that. But whatever. It's the apocalypse. You know, you gotta uphold the rules. I get it. And here we have Maria getting weird and like kissing Clementine on the forehead, saying, "Oh, we can be your mother for you." Really strange. Should be another red flag, but it's not. Fen here is expressing regret for not saving some people back home. That's something. And I guess Maria said, every time you kill a zombie, you're balancing the scales, which I guess it's just a manipulation tactic. So I guess that's like decent enough writing. And here we have Clementine saying, oh, she wished she could have saved her. And I do kind of like how Clementine was like, oh, people don't just die, it's only because of zombies. I mean, I guess that's consistent, and she feels like, oh, I should have been able to have the opportunity to save her, you know? They're arguing about what color they're going to paint the room, like, who cares? And then Saw shows up, and this is the one scene where I don't actually hate her, and I hate Clementine instead, because Clementine's just so dismissive of these people who are trying to care about her. And she gives Clementine an Allen wrench, and this shows up at the end later when she needs a weapon. You know, she has it on her. So that's like one time where they do an actual setup for something. She leaves and says, I'm not going to drag you back home, but you can visit if you want. So here we find Maria's plan. And this is another part where it's like there's so many red flags with this Maria person this whole time. And this is where it should ring alarm bells, because she basically talks about how she's going to take over the town. This town's going to become ours, and people are scared. She points out that people are scared of everyone. The council never understood us, and it's going to be ours. They think we protect, but we're the ones with power, and how the town is soft and all this stuff. And that's where, like, Clementine should ask a follow-up question. What do you mean it's going to be ours? What do you mean that we're the ones with power? What are we going to do with it? Because at the end of the book, when she's like, okay, yeah, we're going to do exactly what I said and take over the town and start killing people, Clementine's like all surprised Pikachu face. It's like, girl, she just told you, like, that she was going to do that. And why are you not questioning it at all? And Maria lies about how, you know, her family died and there's so much blood. She didn't exactly explicitly lie, but she did say earlier that everyone important to her died, just like Clem. But, you know, it's just another manipulation tactic or whatever. So Clementine should definitely be like, I'm fully out now. And she does get to that point later, but it's like, it's a little late, Clem. And then here we have Clementine saying she can make shoes all of a sudden. Like, where did that come from? I don't understand that, but whatever. Kind of reminds me of when Morgan in Fear season 7 all of a sudden was like a mechanic and knew how to make a car or something. It was like, what is going on? But Clem's like, I need measurements in 3 days. It's like, I don't know. So this lady who runs the town, you know, set up this whole situation. She has no means of enforcing anything. No people who answer to her directly. She only has this group of people that she doesn't trust, and she doesn't show up with other people. She's like, I need to see you by the end of the week, or what, you know, or what, like, these people have all the power, you know, just terrible leadership, you know. So I do blame this council lady for it getting to this point, especially because she knew how crazy Maria is, you know. And then Clementine is given some baby formula, and she's supposedly not supposed to give it to anybody else, even though, like, why do they have baby formula at this house? None of them are pregnant. Like, they have no need for this baby formula, and they're just hoarding it for some reason. I don't understand where they get it from, but, like, Clem's gonna die if they don't give it to her. I guess this is supposed to make us like this person who's helping Clementine help Olivia, who Clementine ignored and, like, sent away. Like, I don't even feel like she cares, but she cares enough to give baby formula. I don't know. It's just weird. Like, hey, you know that girl that you told to F off? Well, you need to help her now, and you get killed if you get caught. It's just like, I don't know. The train of logic doesn't make any sense. But it just gives her a reason to go back into town. And then Fen here goes into the garden and then gets bit in the process. We already talked about that. It's just so dumb. It's just arbitrary, like, oh, we need some conflict, let's throw a zombie in there, and just really illustrates how dumb the situation is. And then they amputate Fen, so Fen doesn't die, Fen amputates, and Clementine isn't even there. Like, oh, you don't need to be there to see it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I kind of want her to care, you know what I mean? Then they need painkillers, and then, you know, Clem goes into town to try to ask the lady for painkillers, and the council lady's like, please bring Maria out here, we need to talk about something. And that's when they go into town, and they talk to the council lady. She's like, we're not doing this anymore, your garden's getting taken down. And then Maria just kills a zombie and rips its head off, which on one hand is like, okay, that's a red flag, right? To the council lady that like, this isn't going well. She walks away, doesn't say anything. So at this point, if the council lady reached this ultimatum, she should have an alternate setup already. She's like, we're going to set up something new, and she should have a militia ready. Like, we're taking over, and you can either leave or you can reintegrate into the society, but we're not doing things your way anymore. Like, but she just acts like this Maria person she knows is crazy is just going to roll over. And Clementine has to be the one to say, like, no, they're going to take over. Like, again, it's just terrible leadership. And here we have her killing a zombie, which at this point in the apocalypse should not be a shocking thing. And yet the council lady's like, oh, goodness. You know, and it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, she tore a zombie's head off. It's a little brutal, but like, they should all have had to have killed zombies at some point. You know, it shouldn't be something crazy to her. And then here's where she's like, yeah, we're going to take Newark for ourselves. And Clem's like, oh, what? What? You mean exactly what you said you were going to do? Whoa, that's super crazy, dude. And then, you know, Fen at this point is thoroughly drunk the Kool-Aid, even though Fen just lost a limb to this woman's stupidity. And Clem should have been able to say, like, hey, these people don't care about you. Like, they just got your freaking arm cut off for literally no reason. But, you know, Clementine knows that Fen drank the Kool-Aid, but still tries to warn her. Anyway, that's fair enough. But then Clem leaves and then comes back knowing, you know, that Fen's probably not cool with Clem leaving. So she goes back to warn her friends about it. And then she goes back and they immediately capture her. And then Maria's like, nobody leaves me. Take her and bury her in the garden. And then they leave her alive, and she's buried. She has flashback memories and whatnot. And there's the kitty cat, which I like the kitty cat. And then she's stuck in the dirt. And then it turns out later, like, oh yeah, we left you alive because we didn't really want to kill you. But it should not have gotten to this point. Like, Clem's very stupid for letting it get to this point, in my opinion. And then she escapes because she had the Allen wrench. She manages to break her way out. Which, you know, I guess zombies should have been able to do that. They didn't have an Allen wrench, so I guess, you know, whatever. And then Olivia and Clem make up, you know, which is fair, I guess. And then we're building up to this big climax where we get to the school, and Clementine very easily convinces everybody, like, hey, we shouldn't do this thing where we kill everybody. And then they're like, yeah, we agree. So again, it was just like building up this whole conflict, and it's diffused like instantly. And we at least have a little bit of a fight scene here. It's kind of weird because at the same time Clem is fighting with the other girl, we have Fen supposed to kill Olivia, and there's no drama over it. Like, Fen's just instantly like, no, I'm not doing it. You know? So there's never a point where you think it's going to happen, where she needs to be convinced or anything. There's one girl who's like in love with Maria or something, and that means that she's not going to turn against her by any circumstance. So Clementine has to knock her out or kill her. I don't know. But then we have the final showdown, which is like, if this girl was in love with this girl Maria, you would think Maria might try to attack Clem, you know, and they're both in the room, but Maria's just kind of standing there doing nothing while this is going on, so it just doesn't make sense. And then there's this final showdown, and basically Clementine's on the ground. She's got her dead to rights. Here's a point where the art, you know, with the action scene, it just kind of falls apart because it's hard to really follow exactly what's happening. But here, Clem slides over the hatchet, and then we have somebody else pick it up, and that's behind her. So that's the big conclusion. Clementine doesn't even really finish the fight, so it's not really satisfying in that way. And then, that's it. Everything's resolved, and they all make up, and now Clementine wants to go to Rika's grave, and we have a flashback scene here. Now it's winter, and now, they're all friends again. Everything's cool. And then Clementine goes out to the grave, which, is a nice scene. I appreciate it, even though, I had that reaction to seeing the grave at the beginning. And then Clementine says, "Oh, I learned what a paragraph is at school." And they are finally learning Danish. She learned a paragraph is 3 to 5 sentences. I guess they did teach us that in school, but that's also not really what a paragraph is. But that's, beside the point. Who really cares? This is probably the best page art-wise in the book. We got the nice, lights in the sky, the stars and whatnot. I like the blacks and the gray tones, so I appreciate the shadow work there. And then that's the end of the book, and Clementine's like, everybody's waiting, dinner's ready. She invited everybody home for dinner, and that's it. So she's in Greenland, happily ever after. I guess we're done now. We spent all that time building up this conflict with Maria. It's resolved relatively bloodlessly and not in a very exciting or shocking manner because it's very obvious. And that's the book, man. It was very thoroughly mediocre, and I'm glad that I'm done reading it. So that's my in-depth breakdown of Clementine Book 3, everybody. We spent the whole book kind of building up toward this dramatic finish, and it just kind of fizzles out without too much conflict or anything like that. The main thing that happens in the book is Rika dying, and then Clementine grieves that, and then we build up this villain character who's the most obvious, villain. I think they're expecting you to be surprised when, she starts to take over the town, even though it's literally what she said she was going to do. And then it ends without even really any bloodshed. There's this character who was a turncoat, who was Clementine's friend, who has to kill her now, and then that person doesn't even do anything. There's no struggle there. They don't have to persuade her or bring her back or anything. So it really just ended up being a kind of bloodless finale and not really a lot of action. There's 0 zombies in this book for the most part. It's just pretty uneventful and not exciting, not interesting, not thrilling, not compelling, not emotional outside of the relationship, which I never really cared for Rika anyway. And it's hard for me to get invested in Rika when there's the whole AJ being abandoned thing in the background. So I'm like, well, when is Clementine going to abandon Rika now? So I don't know. It's just a book that did not engross me whatsoever, and it was a lot of dead air in this book. So that's just my overall opinion. So that's my review of this terrible book, everybody. I'm going to go and burn all 3 of these books for the intro now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. It was a little excruciating to get through this book series, but it's finally over, and I have no idea what they're going to do next with the Clementine character. But the only thing they can do is just kind of write that she goes back home and doesn't really address anything that happened, and none of the characters come with her, and they just start season 5 of the games, if that happens, right back home and just kind of forget this whole thing happened. That's the only way they can really redeem this character at this point. But, honestly, I think they should just leave it alone. Just none of it had that oomph of the original Telltale Walking Dead games. There's so much emotion and human struggle packed into all those stories that they told in those games, and this just pales by comparison. So that's my opinion on this book. So just a quick little channel update. I know I've been a little sparse on uploading lately. Just kind of took a break from making videos and just did other life stuff. I had other things going on, but I would like to return to making videos on a consistent basis, and I'm planning to do that soon and even start to stream again. But I kind of want to change up the vibe a little bit. This is obviously kind of the end of an era with this book series, but I kind of want to transition away from doing reviews as much, and I just kind of want to do more analysis, story breakdowns, or, how they made this film, video game, whatever. I just kind of want to get a little bit more in depth, provide a bit more value for you guys. So if there's things you're interested in me covering or anything like that, definitely let me know in the comments. Would definitely love to see what you guys are interested in seeing from me. But other than that, it's been your boy Shuggy. I don't know what I'm doing next exactly, but definitely stay tuned because we're going to be making a comeback soon here, and I hope to see you guys then. So with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.